Hi, this is Paul Schmidt, and I'm doing one of my rare introductions to weird musical instruments. In the past, I've reviewed or highlighted a couple of instruments from Wessex, and this is another one. This is their double B-flat contrabass Cimbasso, which is really just a glorified valve trombone, an octave lower than the usual B-flat valve trombone. And as such, it's kin with other instruments like the bass trumpet, and all the way on up to regular soprano trumpets, if you will, the B-flat trumpet. All part of the same family, but they're called Cimbasso when they get into the tuba register. F is the highest one that's usually made, E-flat, again like an E-flat tuba or an F tuba, and then the double B-flat contrabass that is the lowest one that's pretty much ever made. There are also ones made in C or double C. So this is the double B flat, and I'll flash on the screen what the model number is because I can't remember it off the top of my head. So I don't plan to demonstrate my lack of skill playing this instrument, since I literally got it yesterday and just fooling around with it, trying to feel it out, if you will. But it's underrepresented on YouTube. At the time of making this video, it has no representation on YouTube. And I selected the double B flat because it fits in with my double B flat tuba playing, so at least I wouldn't have to worry about another fingering. I've let my E flat fingerings go a long time ago and never had F and C. So if you'll pardon me, I'm going to feel my way through a couple of more pieces just to give a better idea how it sounds. You know, forgive the intonation and blattiness and other things that are just me trying to come to grips with a very different instrument. I started out by playing Annie Laurie in the low register, and I'm going to do it again, but the first time I had the upright bell, and this time I've got the bell configured as a bell forward, which is the more common arrangement for a Cimbasso. And now something up a little bit higher. This would be the middle register. You probably noticed a few notes that were cracked there, in addition to just some intonation issues and other things. There are some notes kind of in the middle of the range of the instrument that, at least for me, on this mouthpiece, want to split a little bit so they don't hit cleanly, at least not where I'm aiming them with my embouchure. That may be partially intonation based. I'm trying to fight the tendency of the instrument to resonate at a pitch different from what I'm buzzing, and that could be reconciled with a little more fine-tuning of the tuning slides and things like that. And some of it's just getting used to the instrument, and just because it came with this mouthpiece doesn't mean it's the best match for me playing this instrument, and I haven't experimented with any other mouthpieces yet. I will be doing that. So now you've heard what it sounds like with the bell front configuration. So here's the other configuration of the instrument. By pulling out this joint, which is for the normal bell configuration, you can install this joint, which is like a tuning slide on a tuba. And by doing that, the entire bell section can be swiveled around and positioned pretty much wherever you want it in an upright position. A little goofy, but it could be useful, especially if you're seated in a position where the bell forward would be just obnoxious or problematic in terms of fit. You could certainly get into like an orchestra pit or something a bit more easily with this configuration. But if you were in the back row of an orchestra, I would presume that you would want the normal bell forward arrangement. Just like when using this joint down here, the instrument has a lot of weight and leverage out on the bell section, and it's all concentrated right around here. This is pretty well reinforced, but you know, you'd have to be pretty cautious with this, I think. It's just very exposed, and there's no bracing or anything supporting this big section over here. And I'm not going to do any more playing, but I will start my dissection of the instrument for anybody who may be interested in the details of it before they may choose to buy one. Cimbassos and helicons and ophicleides, oh my! Cimbassos, helicons, and ophicleides, oh my! Not to mention Martin's horns and big-ass tubas and tiny little tubas and Civil War over-the-shoulder bazoonis and all sorts of good stuff. E-flat contrabass sarrusophone in the black case. Anyway, so here's a shot of the Cimbasso on the stand that Wessex sells for the purposes of holding it when you're not holding it yourself. I don't think the stand was designed really so much with this Cimbasso in mind as it is sort of a generic stand for any instrument that's sort of tall and awkward, like ophicleides and Cimbassos, but it doesn't fit this instrument very well. However, it does hold it at approximately the right height, so if you're sitting in a chair next to it, you could grab it fairly easily and swing it over onto your shoulder. It's really just a bracket with a pad on it, and it has flanges at each end of the bracket. You have to somehow figure out where the instrument's going to sit on it. If you get it a little bit too far one side or the other, it wants to tip over sideways. So I had to find the sweet spot, and that involved moving the peg over to one end of the saddle down there. So basically it's a tripod stand pretty decent one. The knobs are a little plasticky, but that's not too bad. The stand cost like $135, $150 US, something like that. So it's not a cheap stand. However, it does seem to be pretty well built. It's mostly metal. You've got this swivel head on it, which, you know, lots of things could go on there, from a music stand, desk, to other things. But in this case, it's this swiveling plate which you can adjust that way, and of course you can raise and lower it with the joint down here. The saddle can really be mounted anywhere along a leg. It can go anywhere in here, anywhere down here. I chose to have it as close to the floor as possible. It just slides up and down those wide areas in the leg with a big thumb screw on the bottom to tighten it. And this is basically like the pad on a tuba stand, like you might use to set an upright tuba on instead of setting it on your lap. But with that type of pad, it seems to be designed to sit on the bottom bow of an instrument. And there is no bottom bow of this instrument that I'd want to sit on the ground. So that's a problem. However, I have it sitting there with the peg on there, in which case the pad doesn't do that much good. But, you know, I may fool around with it and adapt it a little better. I might, for example, cut through the foam in one space so that the peg just drops into a recess there and stays without compressing the rest of the foam. I'm not sure. Anyway, so while I'm looking at this part, you do have the telescoping peg, and it goes all the way up to here, where there's a bracket with a thumb screw on it, and then just a little ways up there's another bracket with a thumb screw, and the peg just telescopes all the way up there, so the rubber bottom of it can be up around the water key here somewhere, and then the top of the peg is way up here higher on the instrument if you're not using the peg. But it's pretty heavy, and I wouldn't want to try to hold it. You know, there's no way you can hold it between your legs or sit it on the floor without the peg. The other thing about this saddle down here is that the lowest thing on the instrument is the main tuning slide, which is down here, and it has a water key on the bottom, so you'd be putting all the weight of the instrument on the water key, which is not that great of an idea. And depending on the player and other things, you might have that extended more or less, but almost certainly it's still going to be the lowest slide on the instrument. So, you know, not great. It would be nice if I could mount this up higher and not have the water key here, and then it would sit there, but then the weight of the instrument would just push the tuning slide in. Next time you pick it up, it's going to be out of tune, so you don't want that either. The other slide on the bottom is the fourth valve tuning slide right here. It has a water key on it here, which is kind of odd. I don't know why they would do that. It's scratching my head about it. I mean, this one has it on the bottom where you think it would be. This one's on the bottom where you think it would be. This is the, what is it? It's the third valve slide. And the second valve slide is up here. And the first valve slide is, where's it at? Oh yeah, this is the first valve slide down here apparently. Let's see, I think I got that backwards. No, the first valve slide is over here on the back. So this is the main tuning slide down here and the fourth valve slide here. So I'm going to start with an overview of the parts of the instrument. You've got the bell section. That's what I'm calling the bell section. It's really like, almost like the outer wrap of a, you know, small euphonium or something, and I don't know if that's what was used for this. Wessex told me that they copied an original instrument to make this one, and it has the characteristics of the one they copied. I don't have any experience with Cimbassos, but I do know a number of people who have them, and I've seen pictures and read you know, commentaries by people who play them regularly, and it seems like at least half the Cimbassos in the world are lash-ups that somebody made in their basement out of pieces of tubas and other things. And it may well be that on the original instrument this might have been like the outer wrap of a tenor-sized low brass instrument. However, the spacing here is not what you would expect. So I'm not suggesting that Wessex actually took a small euphonium or baritone from their production and just left off the valves and put it into service for this Cimbasso. I don't think that's what happened. But apparently quite a few Cimbassos are done that way. And the smaller ones, like the F ones, I think the tubing just comes up here from the main body of the instrument and kind of makes a turn and comes back. But here, because it's the double B-flat contrabass, it's got an extra wrap of tubing. There's obviously a lot of stress on this part of the instrument. This is a fairly heavy piece of brass, and it's exposed out there. It has a lot of leverage anytime it gets bumped or pushed or lifted on or anything. And this is a problem common to all Cimbassos, from what my understanding is, not just this one. You know, Wessex didn't create a problem here, and they tried to solve it in the way most makers solve them, by probably making this out of a heavier brass, I would guess, and then soldering on a big rib to help reinforce it and prevent it just folding over. Still, I would not want to subject this instrument to any forces beyond the bare minimum that the player can arrange to subject it to. I think it would just be asking for trouble. There are these clamp type thumb screw fittings, one here and one here, and that's how it's attached. And you can loosen that one and tip the whole bell that way if you want to, and you can also swivel the whole bell section that way, and you can also use them a bit like tuning slides if you should. Some people apparently say you can't get these things in tune unless you have tunability, kind of like a tuning slide here. And maybe that's true, maybe it isn't, I don't know. But anyway, it is adjustable in several different ways. There's also a gooseneck or a bocal here. It also adjusts with a thumb screw clamp, like you might see in the same position on a sousaphone or a helicon or something. And this is where you can adjust it for optimal player height and comfort, and also to swivel it this way and that way for best fit. Wessex does provide a big tuba-looking mouthpiece. It says Wessex Bel Canto. That's the model. I think it's just one of their tuba mouthpieces. Okay, so we get down here, and the tubing goes all the way down to the main tuning slide, comes back up, comes around the top, and goes into the first valve. Then the first valve tubing is on the back, going up here, down a ways, tuning slide with a water key, back up, and knuckling back into the first valve. So that's first valve slide. Second valve slide is pretty simple. Just pops up and back right on the front of the instrument. The third valve tubing comes around this way, comes down to here, tuning slide with water key, comes back up and returns to the third valve. Fourth valve comes out, goes down through the fourth valve tuning slide, back up here, wraps around, goes down to here, comes back up. Let's see, I lost it. Yeah, and then it comes back around here and returns to the fourth valve. Once we come out of the fourth valve, we come out back here, come down on this piece of tubing, which does not have a slide or a water key. I guess the assumption is by that time the air has gone through enough tubing to collect in other places. And then it comes straight up the side of the instrument, through the joint, and through the big wrap, and then the bell flare section. So that's the general layout of the instrument. So here's the alternate joint. At first I forgot that this instrument had more than one configuration, and I thought, what's this thing? Did somebody throw a tuba tuning slide in the case by accident? And I was scratching my head about ready to write an email to Wessex, and then it popped into my head, oh yeah. So you just take this joint out here, and this goes in like this, and then this part here goes into this part, and that's how you get the bell section pointing up. And it still has adjustability and some swivelability, but not as much as it does with this joint, because various parts of the tubing start colliding with each other. So this, I think, is maybe more of an afterthought. I don't know if the instrument that was copied had this or not, but either way, it is there and it is usable. So the instrument has just a simple rolled wire bell rim, nothing fancy. It has what seems to be adequate bracing within the main sections. Again, the weak link is here in this joint. And this piece of tubing, although it's braced here, and here, and here, and here, a lot of places down here, to me this area still seems exposed, and I think I would have felt better if there'd been at least another brace, but, you know, maybe I'm being unrealistically cautious and scaredy pants about it. So you can see on here, maybe not so much with the camera and the lighting, but this is decorated in the way of a typical German rotary tuba. So instead of a uniform lacquered brass finish, it has lots and lots of bling. All the tuning slide outer sections and the ferrules all around here are all done with nickel silver. The receiver, you know, again, the ferrules up and down here. This is all nickel silver down to here, nickel silver down to here. Every time there's a major joint in the tubing, it's nickel silver, and lots of nickel silver bling down on the bottom. There's just very pretty. I don't think I could have asked for a more attractive Cimbasso, except for an E-flat or an F1s, which are just a little sleeker and usually rotary valved, and I just like their looks a little better, but I didn't want an E-flat or an F. So the instrument they copied had piston valves, and I suspect that they were lifted off of some tuba section. It does have the fourth finger valve wrapped around a little bit for better reach. The key caps are not, or the buttons have the Wessex Wyvern logo on them, but they don't have any kind of an insert. There's no pearl insert or anything. It's just a nickel silver with that engraving or molded in or whatever it is. The valve caps, top and bottom, are nickel silver, and it's just your regular piston valve. Nothing fancy about it at all. They are not short stroke valves, as far as I can tell. They do not have the oval ports, but the workmanship on the valve seems to be pretty typical, and I don't really have any complaints. It has the usual Delrin or nylon keying system to make it align with the valve casing. Pretty smooth and quiet on mine. Came from the factory lubricated on the slides and the valves. I didn't need to add anything. I'm going to put some dimensions as text either in the description or in a caption in the video for the overall dimensions of the instrument. I also wrote a written review for the Wessex website and put those dimensions in there. I should have written them down where I could get at them and just read them now, but I didn't. Okay, let's see what else. Oh yes, because of the adjustability of the bocal and the joint here, because of the way they can both swivel, this entire body, the main section of the instrument, can be flat like this. It can be bowed out a little bit. You can't get it all the way to the front, but you can definitely swing it in an arc. And I don't find it too uncomfortable to play this with the valves basically sticking almost out the side. You know, my hand's kind of doing this. If I was going to play it a lot, I might orient it more like this, which could be done just by tipping this part out a little bit more. The bell section would have to swivel back, the gooseneck would have to swivel back, but it's very doable. It doesn't have a thumb ring per se, but there is a brace here that kind of acts like a thumb ring. Let's see, I don't think there's anything else about that as far as construction goes. I will say one thing though, the tuning slides aren't really, any of them, in a position where you're likely to adjust them while you're playing. There are two tuning slides besides the main tuning slide facing downwards. That's the third valve slide and the fourth valve slide. The second valve slide, as I said before, is up here. Not impossible to reach your hand around there and pull it in and out, but definitely awkward. Harder than on most tubas. And then the other slide is back here and faces down. And I think that would be just almost impossible to adjust while playing. So most of the intonation issues in various valve combinations would have to be solved with your embouchure, not by yanking slides in and out. So when you're playing the instrument, you want to grab it somewhere. You can grab it here, but I found that to be rather unsatisfactory. It did nothing to prevent the instrument twisting away from your face if you try to put any pressure on the valves. Of course, having your hand with the thumb under the thumb hook there can arrest that to some degree. But I found that it was more comfortable and more secure feeling to grab it here. You could also grab it there, but that's more awkward. This is not a slide, and it's pretty well braced. You can pick the instrument up and carry it with that, I think. I would do that instead of grabbing it down here, because this is less braced. And, you know, going straight into the first valve right there, I think I'd rather grab it here where there's two braces right next to where I'm grabbing it, and another brace here. So a three-way brace, whereas this one, it's braced down there where the tuning slide is, but otherwise, you know, well, there's a brace down there, and there's a brace there. It's just the bracing is further from where you're putting the pressure, so this is where I've mostly ended up grabbing it. Note to Wessex, it might be a good idea to see if the boys there in Cimbasso can maybe offer something to go around that, like, you know, a leather grip or something like you might have on a French horn or something, just to avoid wear and tear on the lacquer. Just a thought. So there's that. A digression. These valve caps have a particular detailing on them, which reminds me a lot of certain early 1900s brass instruments made by American manufacturers, you know, not necessarily Kahn, but Holton, King, whatever, you know. I've seen that before, which makes me suspect that whichever instrument was copied had that detailing on it because of which horn the valves were stolen from. That's just my best guess. One observation where you could get into trouble. Here's the peg fully telescoped inwards, so it fits within the length of the instrument from way down there to almost the top. And by the way, it does have a stop on it, so it won't go out too far. I'm not sure if that unscrews or anything to help you remove it if you need to. It's braced really well down here where the peg telescopes through the outer section, but this whole extended section in the retracted position is not supported. you know, I don't think you would do too much damage to anything, and it is kind of nestled in amongst other tubing. It's just when you first grab it, you think, oh my gosh, what came loose? You know, that's probably typical of all Cimbassos, not just this one. Okay, stuff that comes with the instrument. The Wessex website doesn't address any accessories or other stuff that comes with the instrument. You get the impression that you're just buying the instrument and it'll come in foam peanuts in a box. Which is a good thing it didn't, because the box was trashed when I received it, coming over from southern England via London Stansted Airport, I think, and then into Memphis, FedEx, and then to Chicago, and then to the local depot, and then to me. It's a really big box, way bigger than the case, and so I'm just letting you know that it comes with a case. But there was just a lot of major damage to the box, because for the most part it's not supported by anything on the inside. There were a couple of big garbage bag type things with expanding foam in them, which helps hold the case more or less in the middle of the box, but it's still sitting on the bottom of the box, so not immune to shocks from just being dropped hard. But you know, it did its job. I thought the box was almost unnecessarily large for what was in it, making it harder to handle. It also had plastic straps around it for reinforcement, and one of them had cut through all the way, like halfway through the box, and was just like rattling around loose. And the FedEx driver actually cut it off the box just before they took it out of the truck, because it got caught on something in the truck. Anyway, so minor gripe there about the way it's shipped, but the instrument came through unscathed. Ultimately, the packaging did its job. So stuff you get with it, you get the alternate joint for assembling the bell section in an upright position. Okay, so I got interrupted by a phone call, forgot where I was. So you get the Wessex cap. It's a decent quality cap with a, instead of the little plastic tightener band around the back, it's a sliding cloth strap with a buckle, and this is actually one that I can get to fit on my head. The other Wessex caps I've gotten with other Wessex horns did not fit on my head, so apparently a small production change was made. So that's a couple things that come with the horn. Another thing you get is this Velcro closed padded bag, and inside, you can tell it's Wessex. It's a valve care kit. It looks like there are 3 coil springs in there, 3 of the keys, the plastic keys, a thumb screw, a water key cork. So that stuff's in its own little bag. There is an instrument care kit, which I haven't really looked through yet. It's got a wiping cloth. It's got a big brush, probably for brushing out the valve casings. There's a tapered brush, Christmas tree, that's probably for cleaning out the throat and the shank of the mouthpiece, and probably the receiver too. There's this plastic rod that I've got no idea what it is. Oh, it's a pencil. Okay, it's a pencil, a Wessex pencil. And a little bottle of Wessex piston valve oil in a plastic bag to prevent messiness. So that's the instrument care kit. Nice things to throw into the bag. Doesn't cost them very much, and it's helpful to the players, and it increases at least the psychological value. Although I dare say anybody who would buy one of these monsters is probably pretty well set for things like valve oils and brushes and cleaning stuff, but still, it's nice to put in there. So, time to address the case. So this is the hard shell case that the instrument comes in. The other Wessex horns I've received have either had a gig bag or a hard shell case that was made out of, you know, 1/4-inch plywood or something like that with a, it's not even Naugahyde, just some sort of black fabric over it, but it looks okay. Latches and hinges a little flimsy, but it's okay. The kind of thing that's okay for carrying a horn around in, but you probably wouldn't want to trust airline baggage handlers with it, that type of case. But, you know, everything's being sold at a pretty low price, so you can't expect the most glorious case. So this is a step up. I was very pleasantly surprised to see that A, the instrument came with a decent case, and B, that it doesn't require 2 cases, and C, that the case is a reasonable size, not that much bigger than a euphonium case, or more like a Barry Sachs case, really, is what it is. It's an aluminum valence molded case. I don't know what the plastic is. If this was a case by your traditional American makers, it would probably be something like a polyethylene plastic, which would be very tough. This may be ABS, it may be something else, I don't know. It came with a Wessex badge loose in a bag. I guess you could put it wherever you want or nowhere. And I decided to epoxy mine right up here above the handle. So you have a carrying handle. It's made to look like leather, but it's just hard plastic. 2 latches. They are not lockable. I don't see any means to put a lock on them, so that's unfortunate, but and then a piano hinge down the back and 4 large rubber feet. So that's the essence of the outside of the case. And once again, I will put the dimensions of the case in the description. So here's the inside of the case. Besides the outer plastic structure, from the feel of it, it's some very, very stiff foam, not compliant really, that's been molded. You know, it doesn't give really, and it has some sort of velvety material glued over it, so perfectly adequate. There are also Velcro straps to help hold the sections of the instrument in their places. There are 2 straps for the main body of the instrument in the bottom of the case, and 2 straps for the bell section in the top of the case. There's also a single plastic reinforcing ring to put a mouthpiece in, and it's captured there because it can only rise up a little bit before it hits the padding on the top of the case, so it's not going anywhere. Then you've got this sort of recess here, which is for the 2 joints and the bocal. They all have to fit in this space right here. So they don't really get any padding here, but you know, it's on the top of the case, you probably don't really need it. There are also 2 pieces of foam. This one goes inside the bell to help keep it centered inside the more generously shaped recesses in the case padding, and then a piece of flexible cushier foam which lays in between the bottom and the top of the case to separate the 2 brass pieces from each other. So there are all the pieces separated and collapsed to whatever degree they need to be collapsed to fit in the case. First thing I'm going to do is put in the main body of the instrument, and because of this recess here, I'm pretty sure that's where the valves need to go. Okay, there it is, sitting pretty far down inside the case, and I'm gonna take my mouthpiece and drop it in there. So there's a bit of a trick to put the 2 joints in the case. It's contoured, as you can probably see there, so it's clearly profiled for 2 different pieces, and this one's definitely the longer one. Then there's a shorter one here. So you know, which way does it go? Does it go both ways? Now this way it sticks out too far over there. If I flip it around, then it seems to sit up there nicer. And then this is pretty deep, so I believe that this just goes in like that with the mouthpiece receiver up here. This isn't sitting in a slot. I think it works out with this cutout on the top of the case, that this part sits into that. And you can see that that goes almost all the way up to the bell cutout, as does this. So that's clearly the right way to put it in the case. And then the alternate joint drops down into there. I'm pretty sure that's the way to do it. Although it's hard to reach down there, you can push it over and get your finger in the tube and lift it out. I don't think it's supposed to go in like that. Yeah, it'll hit this if you do it that way. So apparently just sticking it in like that is the way to do it. And then put the straps over it. Okay, so there's the main body of the instrument strapped in. And now for the bell section, which goes up here. First thing to do is put the bell block or pad or whatever you want to call it in there. And then handle it carefully. You could probably actually tip the case onto its back, or, you know, to make it a little easier to put in there. Okay, that fits in like that. Alright, and then finally we just close the case. Sometimes that bell pad wants to slip out and bind, but if it's in its place, then you can have it buttoned up like this in short order.